Hi, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Security Bread podcast. I'm Giorgio. In case this is the first episode you watching, and this is just a little project of mine where I invite cool people like Carl today, just to have some, conversation around some security events, stories, news, so that we, at least I can learn something in the process. I'm so grateful to have Carl with me today. Hi, thank you. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, sure. So my name is Carl or Kalle, and more known on the internet as Zeta 2. That's this nickname I've been using since I was 11 years old. So pretty proud of my young self to choose something that would work in the future as well. I have been working in security for almost 10 years now. I currently work at Google as part of the internal red team there, so conducting red team exercises against Google. I have been very active in the capture the flag community, so participating and also organizing these hacking competitions. That's kind of like, I would say, my biggest thing in the security community that I've been involved in. I used to play these competitions a lot, and now in the past couple of years I don't play as much, but I help out organizing things like the Google CTF, also part of the DEF CON CTF a little bit as well, and a couple of other events. So yeah, I think that kind of summarizes it a bit. I used to do a little bit of live streaming and stuff. Haven't done that in quite a while though, but yeah, I think that's a short summary of me and security. I'm from Sweden, but currently living in Switzerland while I'm working for Google here.
Yeah, that's actually very nice. Oh, by the way, I didn't know. I actually didn't ask you, but I think I already tagged your YouTube channel somewhere here, in case anyone wants to have a look at that, and in case you want to go back to do some live streaming. Um, and
Yep.
of course, all of the you can find Carl contacts in the description of this video, as well as the stories we're going to talk about. I always encourage everyone to actually read the news themselves, so they can make their own opinion, of course, and maybe contribute with their own opinions with a comment in there. I'm always going to look at the comments, so please just do it. Little reminder before we start: this is currently live on YouTube. I think live on LinkedIn as well. Twitter this time didn't like me for some reason, so whatever. You can rewatch the episode in case you're not going to watch all of it on the YouTube channel, and the audio version will be re-uploaded on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and whatever. That said, I think we are good to start. And the idea is that I'm going to share my screen with the news we collected in the last week. Here is my screen, okay? And yeah, I'm going to start with the first one. So I thought that this one, at least for me, was very, very interesting. We're talking about the US this time, where the CISA, or Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, I'm actually reading, I don't remember the actual acronym, actually published a report where they did red teaming assessment, okay, penetration testing assessment, or offensive security assessment, whatever you want to call it. They call it Silent Shield because it's something that they do, targeting some, U.S. agencies, federal agencies in this case, without actually agreeing the engagement, without actually notifying them that they're going to do it, and as far as I understand, without any predefined scope. So they can do whatever they want. They are granted the possibility to do so from the government, and they're basically free to do anything, which is pretty nice, pretty crazy, I would say. The news is actually pretty good. Once again, go and read the news yourself. We're not going to spend the time to read all of it, but they basically describe every major step they achieve inside the environment. And spoiler, they actually go and achieve a lot of it, eventually gaining even admin account privileges. And they actually got in 2 different ways, exploiting an external vulnerability and via phishing, which is always pretty easy everywhere, apparently. But what I want to focus first is the kind of activity itself, right? This, I don't know, maybe I am ignorant, which I am actually, but this is the first time I read about something like this. This is something that doesn't definitely happen in my own country, right? I don't know about anything in Europe like this, and I think it's pretty good actually, to have something from the government or government agency which are going to actually assess your environment without defining a scope, because it's if you define the scope and the limits and everything, you can prepare yourself. But this is actually simulating a real attack in the best way possible, right? So I want to know what are your thoughts about this, first of all.
Yeah, no, I think this is it's really cool that the U.S. Government is doing these types of assessments, right? But because of what you said, you kind of like the CISA has this like mandate to perform these exercises, and I mean, of course, I'm also not super familiar with this program, so it sounds from the news article that they can, they're not notifying anything at all, and they just, pick an agency that they want to target, and they perform this red team exercise. And I mean, I think that's really nice because of what you said, right? You don't need to like necessary, like it becomes more of a simulation of maybe what like a real world attacker would see. Like there was mentioning of like there was an unpatched Oracle system, I think that was kind of one of the initial entry points. And I mean, supposedly this is something another attacker could have found like on the internet and exploited, right? So yeah, I like it. I also don't really know about similar programs. I know, for example, in Sweden, where I'm from, that the Signals Intelligence Agency, they have a mandate where they are like available as a resource to carry out like penetration tests to other agencies. Okay. But that's more of like in the same way you would contract like a consulting firm, like the request has to come from that agency, and they have to say like, okay, we want to do a penetration test. And then if, let's say, this is a very sensitive thing, so they might not be able to like go to like a private contract, they can go to the Signals Intelligence and say like, hey, can you please do like a penetration test or something against this? But this US thing is taking it a bit step further, right? With this where it's initiated from the other side, which I think is cool.
Yeah, definitely a step further. You mentioned a couple of things that are very interesting, and I wanted to add a bit to it. First of all, the vulnerability they say they exploited. As far as I understand, it was technically a 0-day, meaning that the agency themselves didn't apply a CVE yet before actually exploiting it. So they actually used the vulnerability, and just later on they assigned a CV and actually communicated to the agency, oh, you actually have this vulnerability in there, you should patch, while they were already inside the environment, which is once again pretty interesting. The other thing I wanted to mention is, and this is something we actually discussed in the previous episode, so go check that out if you're interested. The fact that not only the activity itself, right? But the fact that there's a full report where they describe everything they did and how they get in, I think it's very, very interesting, because they're not only providing a service to that specific agency, right? But also anyone else, any similar agency possibly, but also potentially any other company. They can just go and read the report and potentially learn something from it and use that as a resource to enhance their security measures. And we were talking in the previous episode about the importance, right, of actually publishing like a report like this, a full report with details about what happened during a real incident or maybe something like this, because it can be helpful for a lot of other organizations as well. And if you're doing it as part of some kind of government program, I think it's very, very useful, because you do one activity, so your people are engaged with a specific activity, but at the same time are providing a service potentially to the entire country, I would say. So yeah, that's I think that's very, very interesting. This is something that the other countries should probably take example, probably.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and also I'm trying to like piece together the kind of timeline from this, and it was interesting what you said. Like they used this exploit or this vulnerability, as far as I understand it, because they talk about doing this in 2023, right? But the CVE is a 2022 CVE. But then, so to me, it sounds like the vulnerability itself was known, but there was maybe not necessarily like a full public, weaponized exploit available at the time. So it sounds like the agency was able to weaponize this exploit, and then later, once it says 2 weeks after the team obtained access, exploit code was released publicly into a popular open source exploitation framework. Maybe there was like a Metasploit module or something like this. So maybe then someone else on the internet basically did the same thing, and at that point they felt like, okay, we now this is added, it was added to this known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, right? So I think it's interesting, because this means also that the security agency, even though this doesn't really say anything about the capabilities to finding vulnerabilities, which they surely have those capabilities as well, but at least it shows the capability to like taking a vulnerability, creating a weaponized exploit, and using this in a like offensive context, right? So yeah, it shows like there is definitely some skilled people working in this, which I think is also always cool to see.
Absolutely, and once again, it tells me that this is just my very, very simple reasoning. Skilled people, usually you need to pay them, right? If you want them, you need to pay them, which means also that a government agency has budget potentially to have a proper skilled and trained team to do something like this. Because of course, the program itself is very important. The fact that someone decided to establish this is very important. But if you don't have the capabilities, the people, the technology to actually provide the kind of service, it's not really useful anymore, right? You have to have both of them. You have to have the people, the technology, and also to be granted the possibility to actually do it. And the fact that they actually demonstrated to have both of this, and as you said, back in last year already, that says a lot to me. That's a very sign of a major security program, national wise. So yeah, very, very interesting.
Yeah, I think also, so you mentioned here later, they mentioned the director, Jen Easterly, and I think they are somewhat, so I have a very basic grasp of like, US like government agency work and all of that stuff, but this is a name that I recognize, and I know that they have been active, I think like, maybe on Twitter. I think maybe they were even at like DEF CON as well, or they have appeared at events and like interacting with the broader security community and so on, which I also think is very interesting. So maybe I'm misremembering the details, but like this is a name that I, as a non-US person, recognize, which says something about that they are connecting with with the public. And this is something I think you don't really see, let's say in for example Sweden, where I'm from. There started to pop up a little bit of those activities, and so on. But I still think that the US is like kind of ahead in this regards, at least to compare to other things that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think especially in the last few years, probably 5 to 10 years, I think there has been a very they have grown a lot, security wise, but also I think on a regulation side of things, right? They now have, this is also I think mentioned probably in one of the next news. They now have also all of the companies in the US have the requirement to actually notify a central organization anytime they have an incident, something that I believe, but I'm not an expert in this. I believe they've taken possibly example from the GDPR, or something like that. And now this has become a pretty common thing in any, not only in the US, but pretty much everywhere,
Yeah,
as I've seen. And
we have
that's a very good thing.
I know in Sweden, for example, I'm just keep referring to this because it's this
Right.
one country that I actually know something about. I think it's not the general requirement for any company, but it's like if your company is considered like part of critical infrastructure,
Yeah.
like healthcare, telecom. There are a couple of maybe finance, like financial institutions. Some of these have certain requirements to report incidents like this, which I think is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, we have something like that in Italy too, and
Mm.
possibly I think the one in the US is probably similar.
Mhm.
I think they also include not only, yeah, I mean, they define critical infrastructure with also all of their federal agencies, a lot of the
Mhm.
public
Yep.
administration as well, which makes sense. But yeah, I think it's definitely a step forward in the right direction. Um, Before we jump into the next news, because unfortunately we have a limited time, I would like to mention a couple of things here. Um, One that I cannot find it, but anyway, the point was that at some point, the red team was able to gain a text file with a list of plain text credentials. Good job for that. Not to the red team, but to the actual people writing the credentials to the text file. Um, and with that, they were actually able to jump into other federal agencies environments. So something like a lateral movement between different organizations, which is technically what you see on a supply chain attack, what we usually call supply chain attack. And this is something that I'm keep repeating from multiple episodes right now. It's kind of supply chain is the we what's happening to my, oh, I should stop doing this. For all the people who are just listening, you can't see unless you go watch it on YouTube, by the way. I think supply chain is a thing that everyone is concerned about, and they're actually right, because it has been very, very simple. It has been demonstrated that it's actually very simple to jump from a network to the other, especially when you have a lot of providers, a lot of partners. And yeah, this is just another example of that, right? Pretty scary.
Yeah. Another thing I was also reacting on when I read this is like describing all the technical details is that so how the whole kind of attack path, it just sounded like, if you go to any maybe I'm oversimplifying a little bit here, but if you go to a security conference and you listen to a presentation about like some red team engagement in a Windows corporate environment, you see like the same pattern. Like here, okay, we had like an exploit on like a web server, and then we found some credentials, and we moved laterally, and then there was some Kerberos thing, and then domain admin, and boom, like game over. Like it just feels like I've read this kind of same attack chain like 20 times before, right? It's yeah, it's still it's still difficult, these things. So
I mean, that is actually a thing, right? everyone is actually learning from reports they read, or demonstration or trainings also, right? So that's also another aspect of it. We keep seeing the same thing. There's a lot of resources out there, even publicly shared, completely free, and pretty much every organization around the world is always vulnerable to the same stuff. And still, every day we keep seeing the same thing. That's probably a sign, right? A signal that we are not there yet as an industry. Hopefully we will get better, hopefully. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
So
no,
that's
definitely.
if you're okay with it, I think I'm going to jump to the next news,
Yeah,
which is
sounds good.
also
I think you can
pretty
discuss
interesting.
many. I think you can discuss many aspects of this previous one, but it's we have multiple stories to go through, right? So
Yeah, it's always like that, right? Depending on
yeah,
the news, and of course the person who I'm speaking with, uh, you can speak for hours about the same
yeah.
news, because there's a lot of different aspects. The point is that I always think there are two different values I'm providing with this kind of project. Of course, the conversation itself, with the background and the knowledge of all the people involved, but also at the same time, I'm trying to provide some relevant news that people should, I think, of course, they should go and read, because that says a lot also on your own environment, your own organization, possibly your own personal life, because a lot of times we speak about scams or phishing to targeting just individuals, right? So I think there's some value in actually covering multiple
Hmm.
multiple
Yeah.
stories.
And this one is wild. I would say this story. So yeah, please go ahead and
Yeah,
introduce
it
this.
is. It definitely is. So unfortunately, we don't have all of the details we had with the previous news, right? So there's gonna be a lot of guessing, and that's that's the plan. That's okay for me. But still, the starting point is crazy enough. We're talking about something happening in South Korea, where allegedly one of the most important internet service providers, so ISP, your local telecom or whatever, um, you know, after some investigations, they found out the provider itself apparently pushed and installed some malwares on their customers' PCs. Now, we don't have, unfortunately, any information on how they did it, what kind of malware was it. We just have some information about apparently what was the reason why they started doing it. And so they had a problem with the peer-to-peer file sharing, right? So with the BitTorrent kind of activity that was being pretty heavy on their network national wise. And the solution they found out was, oh, why don't we push a malware on the computer, and we basically disrupt the peer-to-peer network directly from the sources, which is crazy if you ask me. so
Yeah,
so that's the thing, yeah, let's see what you want to say.
yeah. So when I first read this article, I think I had to kind of reread it 2 or 3 times to really understand that I was, or to know that I was understanding this correctly. And the as far as I understand it from this article alone, like as you said, uh, you know, if we were fluent in Korean, we might have be able to find like some better primary sources or something. But so the way I read this is that they went on these file sharing services and put malware there because they wanted to have people they wanted to stop people from using these file sharing services, right? And when I first read it, I was like, oh, maybe they intercepted the traffic because they are the ISP, right? But it's BitTorrent, right? So you have your integrity checks and hashes and stuff. So that didn't make sense to me. And then I was like, okay, but I guess then they must have gone to these file sharing services and uploaded malware to them, which really, like, I mean, it's all speculation here, right? But this is, to me, the most plausible and kind of straightforward way you would do this without breaking security.
Standards
Yeah,
or
so people then get these malwares on their computers. They start having issues, and I guess the plan was then to discourage people from using these file sharing sites because they would get malware from them. But what's also not clear is, like, how was this attributed back to the ISP as well? So that's also like, there are a lot of questions in this story, but the fact that, the claim is that ISP did this is it's really wild to me. This is like, you get some flashbacks to, like, the Sony rootkits, like, what was this, like 20 years ago or something like this, right? But yeah, uh, pretty wild.
so well, as you said, right, we don't have much information, but one thing that I want to point out is that it's not apparently it's kind of confirmed, because at the very end of the news they say that they actually seized the data center and the headquarters of the telecommunication company, which I don't know if anything like this would happen in my country would have been like totally crazy. So I don't know. The fact that this is probably something that I don't know, the local police or some agencies probably found out if they actually seized the offices, and so they actually have some kind of evidences, right? Um, Regarding what or how they could have done it, right? Uh, I have some assumption myself. So this is based on some conversation I personally had with some people working with local law enforcement in the past. The way they actually basically investigated some organized crime back in the day was collaborating with the telecommunication company to potentially intercept some traffic and like, how can I say this? Uh, Basically switch the file they wanted to download with the actual Trojanized spyware, used by the law enforcement in that case for a legitimate reason. But that was mostly when most of the web traffic was unencrypted and was plain text, right? So myself, I also have to say in this kind of issues how they actually did it. It seems to me they actually had some kind of mass exploitation of I don't know, customers via, I don't know, maybe their local routers. I don't know how it works in Korea, but sometimes you have your ISP sending you their actual their actual modem or router, how do you want to call it, and maybe they push something locally through that could be another possibility, I guess. But anyway, it's pretty wild, no matter how they did it.
Yeah.
It actually demonstrates some skills as well, right? So, some capabilities by the telco, which I don't know.
Yeah. No, so I
Interesting.
think, I guess other possibilities I could think of is, like, if there, for example, maybe there's some of these sites don't actually use, like, TLS or something like this. That feels a little bit wild in this day and age, but
Right.
maybe it could also be something like, maybe the ISP, maybe to connect to your internet or something, maybe you have to run some kind of program on your computer to, like, I don't know, set up the internet connection. I've heard about strange things like this. Or maybe, I don't know if the ISP is also like a certificate authority or something like this,
Oh,
and then they
wow.
could do, because this was, I think there's mentioned in the article, they're talking about some story from Kazakhstan, right? And if I remember
Mhm.
things correctly, in, I think it was Kazakhstan or one of those countries around there, there was this story where the people were like there was some kind of mandate that you had to have this government root certificate right on your machines, which then of course would allow you to do traffic interception and stuff like this. So I guess there are a couple of different variants of like how this could have happened. Another, I think, interesting aspect of the story is that I know that in South Korea, like the whole question of like bandwidth and like the cost of bandwidth is like a big thing, right? I remember there's been like legal cases, I think, between like Korean teleco operators and like Twitch, I think, for like, because I think like did Twitch like pull out of South Korea or something? Because I think it's something where like Twitch has to like pay for bandwidth usage of their customers, or it's something like this where like bandwidth is like, I mean, bandwidth is kind of expensive in many parts of the world, but I think it's like a big thing in South Korea, which is why, one might even go to these lengths to do something about it, right?
Yeah. Apparently, it's kind of disruptive for the entire network. So, yeah, I mean, I understand the problem, the challenge they have. Still, there are probably more legitimate ways to address this. They actually, I think it's specified on the news that they actually had a proper how do you say it, legal litigation or something, and the ISP actually won. Okay, so it's actually legitimated. Still, the more effective way that they found to do this apparently was via malware, which is crazy. Like the last assumption I want to have is the worst one, right? And always, because this was true back in the day in Italy, but I always associate the major ISP with the government itself, because at least at the beginning, we had the biggest one that were actually co-participated with government or something like that. And I wonder if that was some kind of malware that was there from before, maybe used for something else, maybe used for, I don't know, any kind of potentially. I don't want to be too crazy here, but we had some cases where in Italy, I'm saying, where to find out about some criminals, the only way they had was to basically put some malware on the Google Play Store, right? And everyone was downloading it. So potentially they had data about an entire country just to address few people, right? So I will not be surprised if this was something else. They had the command and control for this that was, for an entire different goal at the beginning, and at some point they decided, oh, let's push an update to this so we can we can break the BitTorrent thing, and we can solve the issue. Everything is possible at this point.
Yeah, I personally, this is going a little bit too far into like, tinfoil hat. But of course, it's always interesting to like, consider the possibilities. But I would say I think the explanation is simpler in this case. That's where I would put my bet. Yeah.
Yeah, everything is assumption at this point, right? You go and read the news. There's unfortunately not much in it. There's a video, a Korean video, that may be saying something that it's more useful, but unfortunately I don't know anything about the language. I barely know some Italian and English, so I will stick to that for now. But yeah, once again, it's not about the event itself. It's more about the conversation you can have, the various possibilities, and the fact that elaborating those possibilities gives you maybe some ideas, maybe some consideration you didn't do in the past. And I think just knowing this stuff happens somewhere
Yeah.
already gives you, some information.
I also think it kind of highlights the very like important position ISPs have in our like modern society, where so much stuff is like conducted over the internet and so on. I mean, this is all this traffic going back and forth, and I mean, we've seen also from various leaks and reports over the years, including like if you go back even as far as back to the like Snowden stuff, with like ISPs being big targets for like intelligence agencies and stuff like this. So even though this seems to have been done by the ISP themselves, it still kind of like underlines this very central position that these types of companies have in a modern society, which I think is also interesting.
It is interesting, and I want to say something more. I think we kind of forgot about it, or at least we are nowadays giving a little more importance to the big tech companies, right? We usually think about the big social media companies, of course, think about Google sometime, Microsoft, and all of those big tech, which gives us the technology we use on a daily basis, which is partly true as well. But I think if you talk with someone in their 20s or something, they don't really consider the ISP as some kind of concern, or just the possibility that they actually have your traffic. Most of it's partially luckily encrypted today, but still the metadata is still a lot of it, and still very important, which actually takes us to the next news, unless you have something else to say about it.
But I think this is an excellent transition.
Thank you. So little reminder just before we jump into the unfortunately final news for today. Please, if you're watching this, if you think it's enjoyable, useful, or just you're entertaining yourself for an hour or so, consider subscribing to the channel. That's the only thing that really tells me this is useful for anyone, and I should keep doing this. Possibly keep inviting people, and maybe pinging Carl once again at some point, if he if he allows to. So yeah, that's it. Final news for today. We were talking about ISPs and the network metadata, and the importance those information actually have on our personal lives, I would say, not only on an organization or company level, but also as individuals. The thing is, this time we're back in the US. We're talking about AT&T, which is, I think, possibly the major ISP in there, or one of the biggest one. They had rough, rough years recently, with some data breaches, data leaks, and whatever, and especially they were more recently involved in this snowflake kind of supply chain data breach, where attackers got access to this secure cloud provider, cloud storage provider, cloud database provider. And as a consequence, they actually got access to data coming from various different companies. AT&T was one of these, and they were actually storing phone calls and messages, metadata on this database. And attackers were actually able to steal and to treat the company to actually publish the data if they didn't pay a ransom. Now, the data breach itself, it's already pretty interesting, and we could definitely talk about it, and the importance of the type of data that were sent, the potential, let's say, consequences that you as an individual could face if your data, if that kind of data was to be published. But at the same time, I want to focus a little bit on the fact that the news I'm sharing and I'm going to include in the description is actually talking about the fact that one of the people involved in the attack declared, "Oh, you know what? AT&T actually paid ransom." Okay, so we ransomed them. We had some kind of discussions. We asked them, I think, $1 million or something, and eventually they negotiated and went back to little more than $300,000, which is not bad as well. Yeah, that's already a lot. So I'll stop there because I always talk too much and see what you want to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's another story around the ransom stuff. Although I guess this is getting a bit more into this. Well, I wouldn't maybe exactly call it new, but newer variant of ransom, where the traditional ransomware, right? You would encrypt the data, you would pay to decrypt the data, and then we started. I don't know exactly, a couple of years ago or so, there was more this trend of like the leak,
Just
like hack and
extortion, right?
leak. Yeah, extortion, like to leak the data, which is, I guess, because I guess these criminals, because they are creative, right? They realize that to a lot of companies, like, if you have proper backups and stuff like this, then a ransomware attack might not actually be like that big of a deal, or like you can recover from it. But if it's about leaking the data, then it could be very impactful, right? So, and I mean, we will definitely continue seeing these types of things, right? And yeah, it's a tricky situation for the company, though, right? Like, do you pay? Do you not pay? I think for another difference is, right, because with the ransomware, with like when you encrypt the data and you decrypt it, you kind of you get the proof that, like, for sure that you got what you paid for, right? Like, you decrypt the files, you have decrypted them, and it's all good, right? But like, how do you prove that you have deleted the data, or like, how do you prove that you're not going to leak the data? There's like, I don't know, it says here in the news article, I think, about like some video evidence that they deleted the data or something. But like, what does that even mean? Like, I can just make a copy of it and have the copy like in my back pocket and then show me deleting. Like, it doesn't mean anything, right? So yeah.
It's we've spoken about this in multiple episodes, right? The fact that you're dealing with criminals, right? So there's no trust involved, right? I understand. I was a little more extreme on this topic, maybe a few years ago, where I was just saying, you should never pay. There's no scenario where you should pay for ransom. Now I kind of understand there are some extreme situations where maybe people's lives are involved. Maybe it's an critical infrastructure, so the impact will be very, very crazy if you don't have any alternatives. So maybe it's very desperate, but that's the only thing you could do, and that's when it comes to actual negotiating and everything. So I kind of understand some very few and specific scenarios where you actually consider paying. At the same time, it's always true that's when you take that kind of decision as a CISO or whoever you are, that you can take that decision. You should always take into consideration that there's no guarantee, right? No one, you cannot take the word of a criminal, and no matter how many different evidences they give you. You said it, a video that is deleting the file, that doesn't mean anything. Maybe they have another 100 copies anywhere, or maybe they're actually deleting something else, a bunch of directories they just created with the script or something. So I understand, once again, why they could do it. They could just pay the ransom. At the same time, maybe in just a few months they will be back and say, oh, you know what, we found a copy of it. What if you pay me another 100,000 and this time I will really, really delete it? That's something that you have to take into consideration.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's very true.
I also think so. I just actually looked up because I was just thinking about how much is $370,000, and
Mm-hmm.
the yearly revenue for AT&T in 2023 was $122.4 billion. So this is an extremely small amount of money relative to your revenue. Even the other numbers here are looking very good for AT&T, right? So I guess it's true there are no guarantees, right? But I would say that there's almost certainly a guarantee in the other direction, right? Like if you don't pay, then the data is going to get leaked. You can be pretty confident about
Yeah.
this, right? So I could totally see, considering the numbers and considering the potential impact of this. Also, I think there have been other articles that talked a bit more about what data was involved, but as far
Yeah.
as I understand it, it was potentially quite sensitive data, like location data about individuals and stuff like this. So it
Yeah,
is very
let's
possible
let's
that this data was very sensitive.
let's actually mention it because I actually read a couple of other news. So the things was that we're talking about metadata about any interaction between two phones that did actually involve the internet, right? So phone calls, how long they were, when they started, with identifiers for both the source and the target. Even though you don't have the names of the people involved, you can easily find out. Same thing for the messages. You have how big was the message, when it was sent, to who. And the thing is that if you don't know, whenever you do a phone call, the current type of technologies involve that your phone reaches out to what you call it, an antenna or something.
Tower,
Basically,
like a cell tower.
yes, a cell
Yes.
tower. Thank you for that. Which actually gives you uh, some kind of geolocalization, which is not very, very, precise. It's not like GPS, but still can give you an idea on which area you were at the time that you were doing that phone call, right? So that, I think that was the main concern in there, right? That if the attackers are going to leak the data, right, that is completely public. Anyone can go and watch. Maybe I can, I don't know. I can try and find out the number of someone I know, and I want to know where they were at a specific time that I didn't know where they were, and I could use the data to find out, right? I think that was the main concern in there, and yeah, I understand it. At the same time, uh, you mentioned all of the kind of calculation about money wise, the kind of risk implied, that was actually a good deal, let's say. And I agree with that. But usually, the reason why you should not do it, it's should be another one. It's not about losing the money. Most of the time attackers are actually calculating what is a decent amount they can ask for, which is okay for the company, which is also the reason why they go for the very big ones. The other reason one is exactly what we're talking and reading right now, right? Because we have a very important news site like Wired in this case, that is interviewing the attacker, right? And the attacker is basically doing marketing. That's what I see here, right? There is no other reason why they should do something like this, if not for saying, oh, the big companies, they actually pay for the ransom and they actually negotiate. So that even if we ask you 1 million, you can go back, have something a little less, and that's fine. We actually delete it, right? The guy that is interviewed is saying, oh no, I actually saw the data being deleted. I'm pretty sure they were deleted. It's some kind of I'm reassuring you that this is this is okay, right? Someone else is doing it, so you're kind of, I'm not the first one if I decide to pay it. Even the biggest company did it, and yeah, they say don't wire that data was deleted. So maybe it's okay. That's I see the kind of legitimizing this, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the worst part of it for me.
yeah,
That's the real
yeah,
worst part.
yeah. No, and I mean it's this is not a new dilemma, right? It goes
No,
back
no,
to
definitely.
kidnappings of people, and it's it's always the same thing. Like, do you
Yeah,
pay? Do you not pay? I think the the kind of the problem is still there. I think it will not go away anytime soon. I mean, we should try to maybe make things more secure to avoid this, and also because of all of this money involved, right? The kind of the criminal side of this has been become very developed. This whole organized crime, this whole like a whole supply chain thing. I think it's similar to back in the days you had all of the credit card organized crime around this, where you had like a whole kind of supply chain where like one actor would steal the actual credit cards, but then they wouldn't actually use them themselves because they didn't have the knowledge. So they would sell the credit card numbers to another group of people who were specialized in like extracting money from their credit card, and then maybe they would like then go through some kind of money laundering. And so you have like multiple organizations doing different steps, and we see the same thing here now with kind of these kind of ransomware, and also these kind of data theft stuff, where was it like the Lockbit and these others, where you always have these kind of like affiliate programs where like
yeah,
hackers can like hack companies and install the, let's say, what was it, Lockbit or something, and they're kind of independent, and they would get like a cut of the ransom that was then extracted, but Lockbit themselves only supplied kind of the the infrastructure and so it's like your ads affiliate thing, right? But for installing so it's like a whole ecosystem of actors, and so it's become very industrialized, this whole thing.
yeah.
And this is largely of course, due to like the large sums of money around this.
This is part of a broader conversation, but I think it's nice to mention it. I think at some point it has always been like that. It changes the kind of trend for the moment. Right now, ransomware works better. Right now, actually, as you said before, just the extortion part of it, just the leak part, maybe it's the next thing. But if you think about it, it was kind of similar back when the spam. Oh, come on! Once again, this thing. The spam market worked in a similar way, right? There was someone who had the infrastructure to actually send the spam emails. Someone else who were actually providing the items they wanted to
Mm-hmm.
sell to the people, which most of the time were some kind of pharmaceutics or something. You always had, when criminals find out about how to make a lot of money, they actually build entire businesses. They are in fact businesses, right? With various organizations, various specialists in every single aspect of it. Like with the something we didn't mention in this news, the guy that is being interviewed, he says or she says that they are the one who actually just negotiate the money they
Mm-hmm.
want to be paid, right?
Yeah.
So there's one or more people just doing the negotiation part. That's how big this is, right?
Yeah.
So, and yeah, and they're getting paid pretty good. Otherwise, they will not do it as well.
Yeah, and this actually reminds me, when we talk about these things like spam and the carding and stuff. I have some. I remember I've read some books about these things previously. So there is Spam Nation. by Brian
That's
Krebs.
incredible. That's an
Yeah.
incredible book. Go and read
Uh,
it.
it's probably like it's a little bit dated by now. Like this is not quite the world we live in anymore, but I think it's still interesting. And as you said, like the kind of the shape of this whole operation is probably similar. I also read another book called Dark Market with like a subtitle Cyber Thieves, Cyber Cops, and You,
Okay.
which was about like the carding.
Okay.
Yeah, it was about I think specifically some like carders in like Germany and the UK and stuff like this. Also pretty decent a book, I would say, also about kind of organized crime in this. So yeah, two books there. Again, a little bit dated, but still an interesting kind of insight into that kind of world.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think, we are close to the end of the podcast itself. So it's okay to maybe go away a little bit from the major track. And I add a couple of ideas. First of all, at some point I could try and possibly do something like book reviews, or just reading a book and providing the insights from the book. It will be
Yeah.
nice to do it with a guest as well.
Yeah.
More people reading the same book and giving different opinions on that
Yeah.
will be nice. And yeah, by the way, you need to write me the second book you mentioned, because I don't know that one. I want to read it.
Yeah.
But Spun Nation, that's great. It's one of my favorite books at all. And Brian Krebs as well. It's one of my favorite authors, I would say. He has a very good blog where he writes about security news. We often take those for this podcast. And I'm trying hard to try to convince him to become a guest as well. So yeah, we'll
Yeah,
see. We'll see.
actually, on the book topic, so the journalist who wrote this Wired article that we referenced for the
Kim
AT&T,
Setter, yeah.
Kim Setter, her book on Stuxnet, the Countdown to Zero Day, which I think is there in my the white
Oh,
and red
okay.
one is back in my bookshelf. I think that one is like probably my favorite book in like the whole security related area that I've
Okay.
read. Funnily enough, I read it for my master's thesis. That was like why I was
Really?
reading it, because I was doing my master's thesis related to stuff about Stuxnet and so on. But it's actually a really good book. She's an excellent writer. So yeah, while we're on topic
Yeah.
of books and relating back to this article, so strong
Yeah,
recommend.
no, that's actually perfect. And I want to close with this kind of statement, if you want. I think many people in the industry, especially technical people, are how can I say this? um, they are not realizing how great authors we have in the industry that are not technical people, or by background they are not technical people, but the research they've done, they become so much knowledgeable about some of that stuff, that reading those non-technical books is actually so useful, or at least that's what I think, just to understand the broader attacker scenarios, and why attackers actually do that. The fact that there's an entire organization behind what we actually see in the logs, and the things we maybe do it on a daily basis. And we definitely, I think we have a gap. We are missing some kind of conversation between technical people and people researching that kind of markets and writing about it. Some of those people are very crazy knowledgeable and very skilled in a sense. I had I'm so bad at remembering names. By the way, you can see one of the previous episodes I had, a great author as well. And I couldn't believe while I was having the conversation, right? the kind of conversation I was having, and the fact that I didn't have a technical person in front of me. It was really unbelievable, and really suggest everyone to just go and go out of your comfort zone, let's say, and talk with someone who is not technical as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Carl or Calais, at some point I will find out how to pronounce it correctly. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun, and I always learn a lot. So the thing is, as long as I learned something, I'm satisfied. If anyone else likes this, let me know, but I'm already pretty happy about it. Thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully it was nice for you as well. And
thanks for having me. It's great.
That's very cool. Hopefully, I find you once again at some point. Yeah, we'll see. If you don't hate me already, soon, it will happen, but maybe not yet. That's it. That's it for this episode. Thank you very much, everyone who is watching or will watch this or will listen to this. Still, consider subscribing or let me know what you think in the comments. And see you in one of the next episodes. Bye, everyone.
Bye.